Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Go Racing. Plan your day at the races at goracing.ie.
Good evening. You're very welcome to this evening's Friday Night Racing. Friday Night Racing brought to you with goracing.ie. Neil Treacy here with you. And we'll be crossing over to Johnny Ward a little bit later on to look back on today's action and ahead of the final day of Leopardstown tomorrow. Right now, though, I'm joined in studio by Wayne Middleton. Wayne is a strength and conditioning coach for trainee jockeys in the race system. That's the Racing Academy and Centre of Education, as well as for licensed jockeys in the Jockey Pathway. Wayne, how are you? Thanks for coming in to us here today.
Good, Neil. Thanks very much for the invite. Yeah.
I imagine Christmas time is quite a busy period for a strength and conditioning coach in racing.
Actually, it's grand for me. I've got a couple of weeks off. It's a busy time. It's a busy time for the jockeys.
Yeah.
Especially in the National Hunt. So there's some huge festivals going on there. Limerick, Down Royals, and of course the big one in Leopardstown. So yeah, it's great to be part of that. There's some jockeys there that you work with, and you're looking at them, and you can see how they're riding, and even when they get success as well, it's even better, you know. So
I imagine strength and conditioning for jockeys. I'm sure a lot of people on the outside looking in would immediately assume keep the weight down, watch what you eat, etc., etc. I'd imagine much more complex than that. Yeah,
absolutely. I suppose from a weight point of view, one thing that we're always trying to do is help jockeys maintain their weight. They're always trying to make weight. So it's a weight classification sport, similar to boxing or MMA. The only difference is that when they weigh in, they have to weigh out at the same weight. So if they get up on the scales and they're 9 stone, they have to come back in 9 stone. The difference between, I suppose, the boxing is that 2 days before they get weighed in, and then they can bump up the carbs and they can bump up their weight. So what we try and do is to encourage them to manage that weight and to kind of maybe stay a pound or two within your desired weight or what weight they would want to be. And the strength conditioning side of it has a huge part of that, as well as working with dietitian as well. So look, it's early days for us. It's a sport that 4 or 5 years ago, if you said a jockey was, well, I'm going for a gym session, they would probably look at you and they would think, why are you going to the gym for? You're going to get big, you're going to put on weight. So we're trying to change that. We're trying to educate young jockeys, established jockeys, on the benefits of being stronger, being more supple, being able to move better, and we're getting good buy-in, which is great to see.
If you could tell us a little bit about your own kind of journey into where you are at the moment, because speaking to you beforehand, you were saying until you actually got involved with the race system and became involved with it, that you really hadn't had any involvement with racing itself. You were kind of involved with GA teams, personal training, a little bit of small bit of rugby teamwork.
Yeah,
as you say, you'd been surrounded by horses growing up, being from Kildare around the Curragh, but this was a whole new ballpark for you.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Curragh, and like you'd be going to primary schools and you see the string of horses, but was never on a horse until this year actually. And I left school and I was playing rugby. I was an average rugby player. I was a fit but poor Gaelic football player. So I managed to play in lots of different positions because I was full of running. And then I just started to kind of, I was always big into fitness. I was always fit when I was younger, and then I'm still fit, I'd like to think as well, but I'm not as fit. And then I just kind of moved towards I retired from rugby when I was 33, and then the following year, then my club Kildare, we won the Leinster League Division 1, which was huge back then, and I was responsible for the physical preparation of the team then, and then. I was working with the Carlow GA footballers for 5 years, so got to see a huge amount there, got to meet some really good friends, and moved from there to my own club in Suncroft, and then working with Moorfield GA, and then I took a call about 4 years ago from Dr. Sarah Jane Cullen, who's big into research for jockeys, and would I be interested in coming in race. They were looking for an S&C coach to work with the trainee jockeys there. So, like as I was saying earlier, I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but it just struck me as something that would be hugely interesting. Like, to be involved in team sports is great, but it's quite saturated. There isn't kind of any, I suppose, long-term role there, unless you're very lucky and you get in with one of the provinces in rugby, and you've got to start at the bottom then and move up. So I just saw it as an opportunity to get involved in a sport that I had always had interest in, but knew very little about from the jockey side of it. My uncle was a jump jockey. He was a champion jump jockey in Germany, which I always flag him about. I don't know if that's something to rave about, but anyway. So then I started working with the trainee jockey. So in the racing academy, they do a 10-month residential course there. So it's a trainee jockey course. It doesn't give them a license. So when they leave, then they can apply for a license then as well. And then I started working with one or two professional jockeys privately. And then last year, HRI and the Turf Club worked towards what we call the Jockey Pathway, which is really moving on from what Adrian wanted, Dr. McGoldrick, Sarah Jane Cullen and Giles Warrington. So they're big on the whole research and I suppose player welfare or jockey welfare. And we've been pushing for this Jockey Pathway. So we started it last year where we would do 4 sessions a week with me, and it was all optional. So they would come in and they would train, and so I was trying to get a feel for myself. But I had done that over the previous, I suppose, 2 or 3 years with the trainee jockeys, and then working with professional jockeys, and then really just working as hard as I could, speaking to jockeys and asking them what does it feel like, when you come off? Are you tired? Are you sore?
Yeah, and as you said a few minutes ago, like, the first time you properly got on a horse was last year.
Yeah.
Like, did it take for you to do that to kind of realise these are the muscles that we need to be working on? Did you have a program that you then had to kind of tailor to realise a jockey isn't going to need to do this as much as this?
Yeah, because like we've got lots of science that tells us how to train, but we don't have much research that tells us how to train jockeys in a physical sense. So I was applying general training principles but I was looking at the jockeys and I was just saying that they must be looking at me thinking, what would he know? Like, he's never been on a horse. If I'm an S&C for a Gaelic football team, I've played Gaelic football, I've played rugby, I've played soccer, so I know what it's like. I know what it's like. So I had no idea. So I'm trying to kind of better myself, but I'm trying to do better for them as well and make them better athletes as well. So this year in race, I was up on a horse and just like to get a feel for it. So these are retired thoroughbreds now, so I've never been on a horse in my life, and I couldn't walk for about 2 days. I was walking down the stairs backwards. So it's like it really gave me an insight in, and I was only trotting. I wasn't. One of the lads was actually holding the rope with the horse, so I wasn't. Yeah. He was actually walking me around on the horse, and then I started to trot. But then I had an idea then, so I went up 4 or 5 times. And I had an idea then of maybe, okay, right, so there's a huge amount of core activity going on here, which we would have assumed anyway, and there's a huge amount of leg activity going on, and there's a lot of isometric work, which is working but not moving, so there's a lot of holding going on as well. So then I said, okay, right, we can get more specific with this now. And you might have probably looked at a jockey and think, oh, this is what they need, but until you actually get up on the horse, and these guys are going at 30 miles an hour as well, so then you can bring it more specific to suit them as well, and then I think they enjoy that more as well when they know you're doing something that's going to benefit them specifically as well. So it just gets more exciting then as well. So
is the strength and conditioning side then in racing, I suppose, relatively a modern phenomenon? Is it maybe in the last 10 years where it's really, up until more recent times, has it really just been about watching what you ate, watch the weight, and the rest
absolutely
looks after itself? And now the last few years they've gone, if you go to the gym, you're not necessarily putting on weight.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think by educating the jockeys that come in and they understand that the benefit of being stronger, the benefit of being able to hold that horse, maybe could be the difference between doing extra work in the gym or it may not be the difference. We don't know that, but they're not doing any harm by coming in. They're certainly improving their physical capacity, and they're certainly improving their strength. And we do a lot of work on recovery as well. So we'll have a lot of jockeys that will come in. Maybe they might have finished racing for the day or finished working for the day, and they'll come in. They might want to do a light session. They might be going racing that evening. So and we'll do like recovery or flexibility session or a mobility session, and I think that's really important that you can actually tailor that to the jockeys, so that when they come in, they know, okay, right, Wayne knows how I might have got a phone call from one of the lads or one of the girls and say, look, I'm feeling a bit sore here. Will you be able to do something for that? Not something for that, but I'll be able to change the session around to suit how they are. And then if they're suspended, so it's like if they're off for maybe 4 or 5 days, so they'll come in and they'll say, "Oh, I'm going to train really hard now." So that's what I suppose one of the best things about it. Then no 2 days are ever the same. So.
Like, has it been difficult to convince some that, you know, doing weight doesn't mean you're going to put on weight?
Yeah. I don't want to get too controversial here now.
Yeah.
You're like, we actually, what I tried to say is that we're not weight training, we're strength training, which may sound the same, but it's not, because their world is about making weight. If they come into the gym and they start putting on weight, I'm out of a job straight away. So, and I need them on my side. So I need them to come in and say, "Do you know what? I went to the gym, and I feel great, and I feel much stronger over a period of time, and haven't put on any weight." And when they're sitting in the weigh room, that's what you want the jockeys to say, you know. And because some jockeys will say, "Oh, I was talking to such and such, and he said that you know, he felt great after that session, and he's been training now for 3 or 4 months, and he hasn't put on any weight." Yeah, you know, imagine that, you know. So, well, if you eat enough food, you put on weight, you know. So you kind of, and then I would work with Gillian, or a dietitian as well. So a lot of them will come in and they'll have a lot of information on how they need to make weight, and they'll say to me, "What do you think?" And I'll say, "You go to Gillian now, and then you work with Gillian," and the same with Kira, the sports psychologist as well. So it's kind of it's a multi approach as well there. So but yeah, they'll you're always going to try and convince people, because people think historically we never did it, so we shouldn't do it, and that's fine, and I don't have an issue with that, and neither does any of the service providers. What you want is, if someone says, "Look, I'd like to come in and train," great, this is what we can do, and you're not chasing people to tell them to come in and train. So it's there for people if they want to engage in it, and those that are engaging on a long-term basis are reaping benefits, you know. So
yeah, it was funny. I knew you were coming in for the last week or so, and I was browsing around Twitter last night, and I don't know if you see it, there's a video doing the rounds of Tommy Kinnan, who's the father of Nick Kinnan.
Standing on his head.
85 years old.
Yeah.
And he's doing a headstand in his kitchen. Holds it for about 30 seconds as well. Like you mentioned there, like how important core strength is. Like, I mean, that is just pure core strength.
Oh yeah,
85
absolutely.
years of age.
Inspirational. I saw it there earlier on as well. I was thinking, I'm wasting my time here, you know.
Exactly. He'll have you out of a job.
Just to go down to the Canarans and start standing on your head, you know. But I think, I suppose, to get a realisation of how strong and how fit these jockeys are. And I'm not, like, sometimes people might look and think, "Oh Jesus, they don't do an awful lot." But they are extremely strong and very, very fit, and that's something that I always admire about them, and even more so that they can come in. Like, I can name check a few people here, like the likes, say, of Paddy Mullins will come in now, and he'll be racing in Punchestown, and he'll come into the gym straight after racing. Billy Lee, who's over in Dubai now, he had 5 or 6 winners in Dubai, which is great actually. Chris Hayes had a winner today as well. So, and then Ronan Whelan had a winner 2 days ago. So.
And is it important having guys like that?
Yeah,
you mentioned
so.
Rachel Blackmore as well, was someone you name checked beforehand.
Well, Rachel trains. I know she doesn't like the media, but she'll probably kill me for mentioning her. But she trains. I know she trains down in Carlow with a coach down in Carlow. But Willie's school's up on a Tuesday in the Curragh. So if they're up, she'll ring me the day before, or text me the next day, come in for a session. As will Danny Mullins and Brian Hayes. So you know there's something good happening there if when they're finished work they want to come in and do something in the gym. Now it could be only a light session, but they'll still want to do that as well. You know, and then like the bigger jockeys, the Chris Hayes, the Declan McDonoughs, they're now Chris is in Dubai. They're long-term advocates of the training. The Shane Foleys, and then you've got the younger guys like young apprentices like Dylan Hogan, Dennis Lenihan, Ross Coakley, all these young apprentices. Gary Halpin, who's not an apprentice, he's writing out his claim. Like they're putting in a huge amount of effort, and they don't see you don't see that. You know, like these young apprentices coming in 3 or 4 days a week, working really hard, and they might not be getting as many rides, let alone winners. Mm-hmm. I think it's just, I admire them for that because they lose far more than they win. You know, mm-hmm. But yet they still have the drive to come in and want to be stronger and fitter. So yeah.
And Wayne, we're running out of time, but just I suppose very quickly, if there are, you know, young jockeys listening in this evening, is there kind of a standard 4 or 5 exercises that you'd probably just recommend getting started on if you were new to the gym scene?
Anything that requires you to squat, because if you look at the position that they're under horse, they're actually squatting quite low. They're phenomenally strong at squatting, which is great, and their deadlift movement, which is their hinge movement, because that's the position they're in. So those two movements are very specific to their riding position. So if they can get a good coach and get them to kind of train them properly to do that as well. Any isometric works like a plank. So, I mean, in January now, everybody will be doing planks after Christmas as well. But that's a really good exercise from an isometric point of view. And then they need to build up their aerobic capacity. So whether that's working on a bike or we do a lot of work on the watt bike. The jockeys love it. They absolutely love it.
I've been on it once or twice. It's a nightmare.
Boxing, if you get into a boxing class, anything that's kind of, along those aerobic lines without getting too specific. So, and then if they're licensed jockeys, just get involved in the pathway. It's free. They don't have to pay, and then and then take it from there.
Yeah, and then just before we go as well, like if you could give us a small idea the role that the race centre, the Racing Academy Centre of Education, kind of plays for the younger jockeys. Yeah,
so it's a 10-month residential course there, and then they have different modules on it. So they'll basically work with the riding instructors there, learning how to ride, how to hone, how to improve the riding skills. They'll work on business in school. They'll work with me in the gym. They'll work on communications, and then after that, then they'll have a level 4, I think level 5 feet tack course on horsemanship skills. And then if they want, they can apply for their license then. So that's in racing. And HRI then, which covers the pathway, once they become a license or even a pre-license, then they can get involved in the pathway then, and that's the route. You don't have to go to race to apply for a license. But there have been some great jockeys coming through race, and there have been some great jockeys that haven't gone near race as well. So, but I think the landscape is changing in the sense that HRI and the Turf Club are doing so much more now for jockey welfare and to improve the welfare of jockeys, and even to kind of help them to understand how to look after yourself and how to keep yourself fit and how to keep yourself strong even when you're not riding as well. And from a psychological point of view, I know for a fact that when the guys and girls come into the classes, they may not be in a great place coming in, but when they're leaving, I know that they're feeling better as well. So there's a lot of downtime for them as well. So that kind of outlet where they can come in and put on a pair of gloves and hit a few pads and go home feeling better as well. So it's probably more important than anything.
And I imagine, given the amount of injuries there are for jockeys and in horse racing, you're probably having to. There's no quiet day. You're probably constantly tweaking the modules and tweaking the exercises.
Yeah, and I suppose what I've learned as well is that a lot of the jockeys, they'll come in when they're broken, and then when they get fixed, then they won't come back. But it's probably similar in a lot of sports as well. Where, you only go to the doctor when you're sick. So what we'll try to encourage them is, okay, look, even if you're not coming in, here's a few things you can do. Like the guys that are in Dubai, they're over there riding away, and I'm still in contact with them, giving them stuff to do while they're over there. So it's it's an exciting time as an S&C coach to be involved in a sport that historically would have avoided it. So I think the direction we're going is excellent. So
Wayne Middleton, thanks for joining us on Friday Night Racing, and Happy New Year.
You too, Neil. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Okay, well, we have Johnny Ward joining us on the line now from Limerick. Johnny, how are you doing? Is Johnny there? Yeah, we might have to give Johnny a little call back there for a second. Wayne, you can hang around with us for a couple more minutes, I think. Yeah. Have you kind of got into racing a lot more in the last couple of years?
Yeah,
now you've been involved
absolutely.
With this?
I suppose I've never watched as much racing. Even today, I like to watch, especially the jockeys that I've worked with, watching their form, looking at it getting tired. Does it look like they're getting tired? And then even chatting to them about their own races and how they're feeling. And then I'm always really watching the younger kids. And I get so much satisfaction when a young kid has been in training and they get their license and they get their first ride. I love to see that because that's a great achievement. That's a great moment for them. Other jockeys are winning Gold Cups and winning derbies. This jockey has got his first ride, and it's huge for them. So yeah, racing's kind of invaded my life now.
Yeah, in terms of the numbers you're involved with then as well, kind of on a week-to-week basis, how many young boys and girls are you working with generally?
because we're based in, I suppose, in Kildare, we're limited, I suppose. Well, not that we're limited, but we're only, I suppose, the people that live in that area or are close by will come in. So probably, I would say maybe over the week, maybe 10 to 12 different jockeys at different stages. You know, so to have one or two jockeys in, we're at a year now. So to still have jockeys coming in for me is a huge success. Like I said, in a sport that would have dismissed any kind of gym activity or strength training activity as well. So, and we know that that's going to improve, and those numbers are going to move up as well. So,
okay, I believe it's take two. Johnny Ward is with us now on the line. Johnny, how are you?
How are you guys?
We got you in the end, Johnny. Before we look ahead at tomorrow's racing, obviously another busy day in Leopardstown and Limerick. The big one today in Leopardstown was the Christmas Hurdle, the Grade 1. It hasn't been a particularly good week for favourites, Johnny, but Apple's Jade certainly gave punters something to smile about today.
Yeah, and it hadn't been a particularly good week for Gordon Elliott either. I was just actually counting his runners last night after day 2. He'd had 50 runners over the course of the 2 days at what would have been, I think, 4 different meetings, including the Welsh National. And from the 50 runners, he'd had 2 winners. And now a lot of those would have run maybe in the same race, but it was a very, very poor return for somebody of Gordon's calibre. And he was probably feeling it a bit this morning. But Apple's Jade, she's just become a pretty reliable mare. You know, this time last year, she looked like she could basically beat anything, but she just ended the season in a strange enough note. There were reports that she was in season at Cheltenham when she definitely didn't run her best. I didn't think she looked happy at all that day, but she then disappointed again at Punchestown. So there was kind of a question mark about her then, but this season, her performance in the Hatton's Grace was absolutely exceptional. Even though Faugheen obviously fell, what she did today was still a hell of a performance. She's running against pretty good horses, maybe not quite Grade 1 horses, but good horses, and absolutely destroying them from the front. And the big question basically now is, where does she go next? And I think a lot will hinge on what Faugheen does tomorrow, or rather what Samco does tomorrow in that regard.
Yeah, and you mentioned Faugheen there as well. We were watching that race this afternoon in the office, and there was just this kind of as soon as Faugheen fell, a couple out, and because he kind of lay there for a while, it was quite still, and you were going, oh God, this could be quite ugly. It was a massive relief to see Faugheen get back up onto the feet and walk away with Ruby.
Big time, yeah. I mean, Carlingford Lough, who was an old stager, obviously, he lost his life yesterday, which was pretty upsetting as well for his connections, obviously. But he wouldn't hold a candle to Faugheen in terms of his place in the public affection stakes. And Faugheen, when he fell, it was like falls over hurdles can be a lot worse than over fence at times because they're not expected at all, especially from the likes of him. And I watched in the press room at Limerick, and one of the guys beside me said, oh, he's not good, when he saw his legs flailing. But I think he was kind of just trying to get back. He's probably just a bit shocked. He was probably just trying to get back to his feet. And obviously your first concern in a situation like that is for the rider, because that's obviously paramount. And Ruby Waltz had an awful lot of injuries, but he got up quickly, and then everyone was sort of just looking as to how Faugheen was, and he got up. And we shouldn't forget that he was far from off the bridle at the time. You know, on the balance of how the betting suggested the race would go, we can probably say he might not have won by the law of averages, but I didn't think he was finished. And I think he would have certainly run some sort of a race, or made her at least work for her victory. And that he lives to fight another day it was great to see. Like, I don't get overly kind of soppy about horses who die, because that's just the nature of the game. But you'd certainly have massive affection for a horse like that. And if he had lost his life today, it would have been absolutely horrible. And I've been to William Mullins before to see him. He's a pet of a horse, and it's just great that he lives to fight another day. I mean, punters are generally losing at Leopardstown, but it doesn't really matter when things like that could have happened.
Yeah, exactly. Also today at Leopardstown as well, you had the Savills Chase, and another kind of short enough price favourite, Road to Respect, disappointed greatly, and Kenboy under David Mullins for Willie as well. That was a very impressive winner.
He was, yeah. He was slightly unheralded winner of the race. He could have run in the big race in England there a few weeks ago in the Ladbrokes Trophy. He didn't run there due to some sort of a travel issue, as far as I recall. On the balance of today, you'd have to think he probably would have won. So if you backed him for the Newbury race, you'd be a bit disappointed. But apparently he did exactly what William Mullins told David Mullins not to do today in the way he rode him. He was a little bit keen, but he really enjoyed himself. And I think he was just able to dictate matters, and it was a really, really good performance. You know, Willie Mullins has never won the Gold Cup, but he definitely has a contender now. The only thing I would say is this was a shambles of a race for all due respect. The traffic problems and the instance that befell him in the last, I suppose, the last mile of the race, and they happened either side of about the third or fourth last, basically means I think he ran a race full of merit because he nearly snatched second. He had an absolutely hopeless position turning in. I honestly think he could have lost about 10 lengths in that race with the kind of, he lost his footing at one stage, he was tight for room at another. So much went wrong. I think if you backed him for the Gold Cup, or if you want to back him for the Gold Cup, you've plenty of hope. I thought he ran an exceptional race, but with the way Might Bite obviously bled at Kempton, and that was an unsatisfactory King George, I think Ireland has a realistic chance to win the Gold Cup now, and presenting Percy still to come. I could certainly see us winning the race in March.
Okay, we'll watch that space. You were down in Limerick today. Obviously, the big one there was the Grade 3 Irish Independent Hurdle. Esbar Dolan, 7-2 winner for Jody McGarvey and Gavin Cromwell. That was a fantastic finish. Like, absolutely stormed home to take that.
Stormed home, yeah, after turning in that even Gavin himself actually got me a lift home from the races. Obviously full of the joys of spring. He thought that the horse was probably beaten turning into the straight, but to finish the race like that and to go from looking possibly held to winning by whatever it was, 8 or 10 lengths, it was a very, very good performance. He gave the mare who was second an extremely well back. He gave her quite a lot of weight on the day. If you took out his run at Leopardstown last year when he was 4th of 5 to his last run of the season, when he clearly wasn't himself, he's never lost a race for Gavin Cromwell. I was just talking to him about his physique because he's not overly big, but he could still become a very good chaser because you don't need to be massive to be a chaser. You actually, a lot of the good chasers are just very nimble at their fences. So he's not really sure what his future holds. He thinks he could definitely jump a fence, but you'd have to think if anyone else owned him other than JP McManus, who has the favourite for the race in Bouverdare, Esper Dallin would be going for the champion hurdle, because he certainly deserves consideration for the race, even though obviously 5-year-olds have a pretty poor record in it, but he's a very, very likeable and talented horse.
Yeah, looking ahead at tomorrow, final day, Leopardstown at 1:55. The Neville's Hotel's novice steeplechase is Delta Work seems to be the one everyone's talking about there. It looks like it's going to be going off as a comfortable favourite. Do you see any other winner there?
Not really, no. It's not the strongest Grade 1 novice chase. Obviously, it's the third novice chase to be run in Ireland this Christmas because there's a new one at Limerick, and maybe it's kind of spread it out a bit in terms of the quality of the runners. Jigginstown have 5 here, which is really, really remarkable. I mean, it's kind of just a sign of, the stranglehold of these novice chasers that they have from time to time. But Delta Work, he was probably considered an each-way player for the RSA chase because Santini had impressed everyone on his chase debut. I wasn't completely wowed by him, but he's been beaten since in any event. And Delta Work obviously has won a very good race last time at Fairyhouse when he overcame a bad mistake the last, but he generally jumps very well and he steps up to 3 miles. So basically, I don't really think he's run against proper Grade 1 horses here, with all due respect to even the other Jigginstown runners. So I can't really see him being beaten if he doesn't fall, and he shouldn't because he's a very good jumper.
Yeah, the lineup then for the other Grade 1 at Leopardstown tomorrow, the Rhino Hurdle, it is just stacked with big names, most of whom have question marks over.
Yeah, you'd have to say they do, particularly Samcro. Obviously Lorena, Willie Mullins' mare, if she had come here, would have been a slightly better race. She's very exciting, but in fairness to horses that are there, it's a cracking renewal, I think. Samcro, I have to think he's miles better than what he showed in the Fighting Fifth. I thought making the run worked out completely wrongly for him. And if you remember when he won his bumper at Navan making the run, and he wasn't at all impressive back in the day. So I basically just don't think he's suited by making the run, and I think he'll run a lot better tomorrow. Whether or not he'll beat Mellon, I don't know. I as far as I can tell, the vibes about Mellon are very strong, and I look back at the Champion Hurdle on the replay there the other night, and he was actually quite badly hampered by Faugheen at a very, very critical juncture of that race, apart from which he may well have actually won, because he was quite badly snatched up, and he only went down by about a neck in the end against Bouverdare. And even though Bouverdare was obviously beaten at Kempton, it's still very good form, and Mellon is fairly unexposed. It's slightly worrying that he ran so badly at Leopardstown last year, but just on the balance and at the prices, I think he might beat Samcro. Super Sunday comes into it as well. Just probably worry about the trip for him. He does stay 3 miles very well. He obviously has previous in this race, but I probably doubt that he would have quite the toe of Mellon and maybe even Samcro. But it's a race to savour for sure. My vote will go to Mellon, but tenth of enough. And I never thought I'd be tipping against Samcro, but there you go.
What about Sharjah?
Yeah, Sharjah's kind of strange, and he's a bit unheralded. Obviously, he won the Galway Hurdle, and he beat Faugheen, obviously, in the Morgiana, and like Faugheen just looked too slow for 2 miles now, and there wasn't any money for Sharjah. There didn't seem to be any expectation that he could win. They probably thought that for a horse that ran the Galway Hurdle, they probably thought he'd be finished for the season by now, or finished for the year anyway. But you know, the ground is, I mean, I for one am very worried about weather. I mean, the weather of Limerick today was practically t-shirt weather. It's unbelievably mild, and this has resulted in horses actually like presenting Percy not running at Leopardstown because the ground is too good in late December, which is quite mad. But in any event, it'll suit Sharjah, who definitely liked this ground. But I have to say, I'd be surprised if he could beat Mellon. I basically just thought he won a bit of a kind of a race that was there for the taking, really, in the Morgiana.
And then tomorrow as well, the other big grade one is at Newbury, 3 o'clock. It's the Betway Shallow Novices Hurdle. Yeah,
Champ looks very interesting here. He's a horse, another promising one for JP McManus, and he's certainly a horse on the up. I could see him progressing on to even better things. Doesn't look the strongest renewal of the race, and you know, JP's had a very, very good Christmas. He won the Paddy Power. You know, he's had some very, very exciting runners, and he probably has a very likeable horse here in Champ, who, as far as I know, is named after the retired Tony McCoy.
And Johnny, before we let you go, it is of course time for our weekly charity bet. The Christmas Racing Festival is in full swing at Leopardstown and Limerick this week, and Toad have given us a €100 charity bet to try and add to our winnings for the Irish Injured Jockeys Fund. Johnny, what have you gone for this week?
Yeah, the horse runs in the first race tomorrow at Leopardstown. I don't actually have the time on me at the moment, but I always laugh when this horse runs because he reminds me of a Rodney Dangerfield joke where Rodney Dangerfield says, "My wife, she said, call over, there's nobody home. I call over, there was nobody home." And the horse is called Nobody Home anyway, so he's a great chance for us tomorrow.
And what odds is that coming in at, do you think?
What's that?
What odds is that looking like?
I think it'll be each way price. I think it'll be about 4-1. It's very well handicapped over fences, and this doesn't look a particularly deep race. Even Rodney Dangerfield could find the winner of it.
Well, Johnny, thanks a million. And of course, see thetote.com for Christmas racing festivals. Johnny, enjoy tomorrow, and thanks for joining us on the line.
Thanks, lads.
And Wayne as well, thank you for coming in to chat to us. After the break, Joe Malloy will be along for more of our best ofs from 2018. Don't go away.
Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
And they're off.
Brought to you by Go Racing. Plan your day at the races at goracing.ie.